Hey guys, today we're going to break down the respiratory system. Bathroom. We're also going to break down a little bit of the cardiovascular system and its also its relationship with the digestive system, because the respiratory system simply can't function without having its relationship with the cardiovascular system, as well it does need separation from the digestive system. Okay, so we're going to start off with, I keep a little surprised too. What is it that we breathe out and what is it that we breathe in? So I'm going to say, what are the two things? I'm going to say what are two thoughts because I'm too lazy to keep on writing. But basically, for you to think about, we're going to in a second. The reason why we're not going into this obvious fact is because we're going to start off with talking about odor molecules. And you're like, well, what the hell? What about odor molecules? We're going to connect how it has a connection with your brain and why simply just smelling odor is actually a unique process. Okay? So keep that in mind, though. What are the two things? What we breathe out and then what we breathe in. That's vital for blood. Okay? So first thing that we're going to look over is simply losing all my pens up here. Where do you go into this right here? This little space right here. What's this little space called? That's where you're here. Read the answer. It's the nasal cavity. This little space right here is a nasal cavity. This nasal cavity is vital. Why is it vital? Well, when we breathe in odor molecules, and these odor molecules will react with neurons, okay? Neurons. What's the importance of neurons? Well, neurons are vital. I'm going to draw a little image of it here. I'm going to draw a little picture. Draw a little neuron. It's a bad picture, but... And then we're at odor molecule. There's a whole bunch of odor molecules that you could be breathing in. Maybe your mom's cooking spaghetti, garlic bread, and you breathe in no and garlic. But, so we have this neuron, and we have this vital molecule. And so what's cool about neurons is that neurons react with other neurons. They meet at what's called a synapse, and then they call this a junction, where they send vesicles, there's neurotransmitters, there's all this interesting information. But basically, this helps create a reaction with our brain in order for us to process that information. And then, for example, with working out, we send alpha motor neurons, we have interneurons in order for us to send those signals down our spinal cord in order for us to create a contraction. Well, the same thing's very similar to odor molecules and its relationship with neurons, okay? We have this thing within neurons. I'm trying to find my pen, can't find it. A little small pen. We have this thing within neurons. It's not like this, but it's the best way to show it visually. It's called cilia. Cilia. These are going to be like hair-like follicles that allow for reactions to occur, okay? The cilia with the neuron helps create a reaction with this odor molecule, just put like this, helps create a reaction with this odor molecule that will later be signaled to our brain, okay? We'll go into that in a second. But I want to explain the unique reaction with this odor molecule and this neuron right here. It was about 500 different receptors. Okay? These receptors, just like enzymes, are going to be proteins. Okay? Proteins are vital to us. Okay? So what can we take of this? Well, there's 534 receptors, so we know that there's limitations. And in a sense, I like to say that it's unique. Okay? So let's go back a little. Let's retry. When we breathe in odor molecules. These odor molecules react within the nasal cavity, reacts with neurons, right? We call this like a clash, a reaction. Okay? And so we know that there's about 500 different receptors. These receptors are proteins. And so we can take out that there's limitations and that each reaction is unique. Well, why do I say that? Well, just like with antibodies and antigens, right? Antibody can go, or an antigen can connect to a certain antibody, right? One receptor towards one sickness, or molecule that ignites our system for disease. We have proteins, and we have one receptor for one, let's just say one motor molecule. At its most basic form, we have one receptor for one motor molecule. Okay? And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because it really points out the unique fact that what we breathe in and the reactions that it causes to our brain are unique, right? We have specific receptors towards specific odors, so that means that at a point we do have limitations towards what we breathe in, the type of odors we smell, and its connection with how we feel about it and what we think, okay? So going back, before we go on to the next step, we have nasal cavities. Nasal cavities with neurons containing cilia, hair-like molecules that react with odor molecules. And these neurons have about 500 different receptors, one receptor for each specific odor molecule, okay? So now we're going to the next thing. We're going to go into its connection with the brain. So I'm going to draw a little brain up here. Now, its brain's going to be interesting. I wouldn't use this for your anatomy class, but you know what? Who cares? Use a better marker. You have our brain. Let's just make it a little pretty. Then, okay. Within this brain, we have something what's called our olfactory bulb. Our olfactory bulb is going to be within our olfactory lobe. I'm just going to put OF lobe. Got it. And we'll go into that in a second, but we have something right around here, I'm pretty sure. That spot isn't necessarily accurate, but the idea is there that we have something that's called our olfactory epithelium. I'm going to spell this wrong, but okay. I'm going to point out one other thing. Within this olfactory epithelium, we have something called, now, excuse me for my pronunciation, but I think it's cribriform plate. Okay. So I jotted down a couple of things. Okay, so once this reaction occurs, it goes within our olfactory epithelium. Our olfactory epithelium contains mucus lining. Write that down. Olfactory epithelium contains mucus lining. Okay. It has mucus lining that brings this reaction within the neuron and odor molecule through what's called the cribriform plates. The cribriform plates it is the entry point by which it will go within to our olfactory bulb. And our olfactory bulb is this part of the brain that senses and creates reactions for our brain, for smell, specifically odor. And this is going to be, the bulb is going to be within the lobe. Okay? I don't know where the lobe, how big the lobe is in the brain. But basically, this reaction that goes within the olfactory bulb, and then olfactory bulb, and then it ignites reactions with the amygdala, as well as the hippocampus, creates two things. Well, memory for smell. And I just want to put in, this is, I guess, scientifically, but reaction, right? So we have a reaction towards smell, we have a connotation, we have a memory. Let's say that you breathe in hot cocoa and it initiates a memory of Christmas. That's because before, within this process of the odor molecule going within the neuron, it goes to the brain, specifically the olfactory bulb, where it also then activates the hippocampus and the amygdala to create a reaction and a memory with this specific odor. Okay? And we know that in order for this reaction to be transmitted to the brain, it must go into the olfactory epithelium. The olfactory epithelium with its mucus lining will carry it to the cribriform plate, where then it's going to get processed into the olfactory bulb. Okay? And I know that seems a lot. I'm going to point out 3 more things. Well, how does it process that information within the olfactory bulb? Is it just go in there and it just like it just reacts? No. We're gonna go a little bit more specific. We have two major cells, and we have a structure that's vital when it comes to us processing this information in the olfactory bulb. We have what's called glomeruli, I don't know, something like that. And this is a structure. Okay. Then we have what's called, we have mitral cells. We have, I think, what's called tufted cells. And so we'll say they're in structure. And so these mitral or tufted cells are going to be vital within this glomeruli structure to initiate this reaction that happened between the odor molecule, the neuron, and the brain for it to be processed, okay? Because what we know about one thing about processing information when it comes to neurons, we know that they meet up at a synapse and ignite a reaction with other neurons and whatnot. It goes far more complex, which we'll go into another day. But these glomeruli, these mitral cells, these tufted cells within the olfactory bulb are vital in order for us to process information and then go on to that excite the other parts of the brain to create a unique interaction with odor. Okay, then I know this is a far-fetched from our main topic today, which is the respiratory system. But when we breathe in, we do breathe in odor molecules, and the process of how we breathe in odor and our reactions towards it is truly complex, more than just us creating a reaction. Okay, I'm going to go through it one more time, and then we're going to go into actually breaking down the respiratory system, its connections within the bronchioles, whatnot. Okay, we breathe in, and I'm going to tell you what those two things are, which you already know, but we breathe in these odor molecules. They occur within the nasal cavity. Okay, within the nasal cavity, we have this odor molecule, and we have this neuron, that cilia, hair-like follicles. And this odor molecule and these neurons create a reaction. Okay, they create a reaction. They then go to this little spot called the olfactory epithelium. And then around here, I'm going to redraw it. Around here, we have something called the cribriform plate. Okay, the mucus lining produced by the olfactory epithelium takes it through the cribriform plate, where it then goes into this special little guy around here, the olfactory bulb. This olfactory bulb is within the olfactory lobe. Okay, and then we go a little bit deeper. We go a little down here, go a little bit more complex. If we really want to go to the fine details, this olfactory bulb has glomeruli structures that consist of mitral or tufted cells that process this information, and then also it ignites the amygdala. And now I'm going to slow this from hippocampus to create memory, or if you're going back here, memory reaction towards smell. Okay. Isn't that crazy? So complex smell mass. It's not as simple as just us breathing in smell. We create a reaction towards it that is largely dependent upon our brain. Okay, now we're going to go on to the actual respiratory system. And I'm going to erase all this. My beautiful drawing, it's all gone. Oh, we should have kept that nasal cavity for it. Yeah. Okay, we can keep the rest of that because we're not going up there anymore. We're going nano-tan. So we have this little nasal cavity. Okay, what are the two things? And if you don't know this thing, we're already struggling here. We breathe in oxygen, and we breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, we're going to go through this little nose right here. Breathe in oxygen, we're going to breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, we have an oral cavity right here. Cavity. And right there. Okay, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe in carbon dioxide. Okay, we have this thing right around here. I drew myself because I memorized the exact location. We have this thing right here. It's called the pharynx. Okay. The pharynx is subdivided in three different categories. We have what's called the nasopharynx. Then we have what's called the oropharynx. Lastly, we have what's called the laryngopharynx. One word, which can fit it here. This can also be called the hypopharynx. That might be easier to say. I don't know though. I like complicating it a little. Okay, so we have the pharynx. So we have the nasal cavity that goes into the pharynx and is subdivided into the nasopharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx, also known as the hypopharynx. For me, it's easiest to memorize with nasopharynx. Very similar to nasal. We have oropharynx, which is very similar to oral cavity. The oropharynx is right behind the oral cavity, so it should be like right actually here, but you know, who's paying attention. And then we have the laryngopharynx, the hypopharynx. And I remember that because we have this next little spot right here. Well, what's this little spot right here? Well, we have this in red because why make that guy feel left out? We have right here, it's called the larynx. The larynx. This larynx is vital. We'll call this the voice box. The voice box. So we have the nasal cavity, we go into the pharynx, then we go into the larynx. Well, right around I'm pretty sure it's the laryngopharynx, but oropharynx area, we have something called the epiglottis. Hopefully I spelled that right. We have the epiglottis, and the larynx is at the edge of the epiglottis. Then we have something also right around here. Now, don't take this as a precise area, but it's around that area. And so when you take your anatomy test, if you do, or you take an anatomy test, you should have a generalized basis of where it is. We have the uvula. Okay. So the uvula is that thing at your throat hangs, and that is what's going to secrete saliva. And so after saliva for swallowing, whatnot. Then we have our epiglottis. Well, what's the epiglottis and why is it vital? The epiglottis helps separate food and liquid from what? From your lungs, right? When you eat, so you don't eat something and then it going into your lungs, because then you would probably die. You know, that probably wouldn't be great. I mean, you do that sometimes, but the epiglottis is vital because what it does is it opens and closes so that food can go into the esophagus, into the intestines, where you have your duodenum, duodenum, and then you have your ileum, whatever order that is, and then gets processed and then goes through your digestive system, right? But we want to make sure that what we breathe in, which is carbon dioxide, and what we breathe out, which is what we breathe in is oxygen, what we breathe out is carbon dioxide, is separated from what gets processed and eaten. You know, I don't want my burger to go down my lungs. I don't want what I breathe to go through my, and you get what I mean. Okay, so this epiglottis opens and closes so that food doesn't enter into our lungs. Okay. But we also have one more part. Around here, so I'll put it right here, we have something that's called our glottis. Okay? Our epiglottis protects our glottis, which is vital when it comes to contain the voice box, as well as separating the from the food we eat from what we breathe. Okay, so just know that the epiglottis protects the glottis, which contains the voice box within our lungs. You know, so then we're going to go to the next thing. We have right here, probably right on there, what's called our hyoid bone. Hyoid bone. One thing, the reason why I'm pointing this out is because is one of the bones within it's a bone within our body that's not supported by other bones. It's simply supported by tissue and whatnot. Okay, and that's going to be in our throat. Then we have something very important now. We have what's called, let's find out where this is located. Just want to make sure I'm right around here. We'll put in an Adam's apple right around here. This is brown. We'll extend this a little longer because we'll break down what the next piece is. We have our thyroid cartilage. And underneath that, we have what's called this. I think it's called cervical cartilage. Make sure it's just cervical cartilage. Yeah, it's either cricoid or cervicoid. Who's paying attention to those? I was even spell it right, which I struggle with already. Okay, so we have a thyroid cartilage, our cricoid cartilage. And this here, that is what it truly is. It's the voice box. It is, we can also call it the Adam's apple. Okay, I know that I kind of want to stew the glottis and whatnot. And so we're going to break this down real quick before we go into it. Okay, we have what's the nasal cavity. The nasal cavity is what helps with, it's the first point at which oxygen is breathed in, last point by which carbon dioxide goes out. Okay, the nasal cavity is also vital for this process of odor molecules reacting with neurons. And then we have what's the next thing? We have our pharynx. Our pharynx is subdivided in 3 different categories. We have our nasopharynx, oropharynx, and laryngopharynx, also known as your hypopharynx. Okay, the next thing we have, it's our larynx. Our larynx is also known as the voice box. Why is that? Well, it starts at the very end of the epiglottis, which is the protector of our lungs. Okay. And then we have the larynx, which contains the glottis, which contains our voice box, such as our thyroid cartilage and our cricoid cartilage, which can also be known as the Adam's apple, or the thyroid cartilage can also be known as the Adam's apple. And then we have our cricoid cartilage right beneath here. And that's where I'm going to introduce the next thing. We have what's called our trachea. Our cricoid cartilage is what connects the larynx to these damn pens. Oh, I found another pen. Okay. Our trachea is what connects our larynx to our trachea. Okay. What is our trachea? Well, your trachea is about 16 to 20. I think it's the cartilage rings. We'll just say cartilage rings because it's what it looks like. Who's looking for facts, you know what I'm saying? We have our cartilage rings, which make up our trachea. And our trachea is vital. Okay? Why is it vital? Well, it connects our lungs to, well, it's what leads into the bronchioles and the bronchi and whatnot. Okay, I'm gonna draw a little picture right here. I'm gonna actually erase this. Just know that 16 to 20 cartilage rings, not a huge important fact that we need to memorize. I'm gonna draw a little small trachea. And then from then on, we'll go up right here, continues on with the rings, and it bleeds out. And this is where we have our 2 lungs. Oh, it's horrible. Okay, we have our 2 lungs. It goes in there. And then it leads to one very, very, very vital thing. So it goes out, it branches out. And so within here, there's two things that you need to take into account. We have the bronchi. So the first thing that it leads is to our bronchi, and then it leads into secondary bronchi. Also lead into bronchioles. Okay, leads into bronchioles. And we have these little guys here. And this is probably one of the most important things that you need to memorize when it comes to the respiratory system. We have what's called alveoli. One of the little circle guys, little smurfs in this case. Call them little smurfs. Okay. Why are these alveoli important? Well, alveoli as well allows for diffusion of carbon dioxide and oxygen, specifically of blood. And so your next question is that how, so before I go to that, we have a trachea. The trachea is broken down into 16 to 20 cartilaginous bones that go down and break into the into the lungs, which consists of the bronchi, the secondary bronchi, and the bronchioles. Okay? And then the last thing that we have within the end of the bronchioles is alveoli. And these alveoli, now we're breaking it down, has capillaries. What do you know about capillaries? Capillaries is where veins and arteries meet, and this is where diffusion occurs, so that carbon dioxide and oxygen can be taken in by the blood, and carbon dioxide can be taken out from the blood. And this is where, from the alveoli, is where blood leaves the. God damn it! This blue penis is important. Let me just use this one. The carbon dioxide leaves the alveoli, goes through the trachea, and goes bam, 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 all the way out the nasal cavity and out CO2. So just know before going further that carbon dioxide goes through the alveoli, and the reason why you don't breathe out blood, or the reason why you don't breathe in blood, is because these alveoli as well as diffusion of the blood to release this carbon dioxide. Okay, this carbon dioxide leaves the alveoli and goes through the whole process of leaving out of our nasal cavity. Okay, then remember, we breathe in oxygen. Oxygen goes through our nasal cavity, our pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, secondary bronchi, bronchioles, into our alveoli. And this is where these blood cells are gonna be like, give me some, you know? Give me the money, give me what I want. The blood cells take in this oxygen and then bring it to the heart. Okay, and this is where we're going to the cardiovascular system a little. Let's erase all this. Let's erase all my work, because why not? Pause the video, before I hold this spread down of some messy crap. So, we broke down the respiratory system. Now we're going to kind of break down the cardiovascular system in relationship with the respiratory system. Okay? We have cardiovascular system, and then we'll just the respiratory system as well. Okay, now we draw a little bigger picture. Down. Then it's gonna go into our lungs. These bad boys. Okay, there's one thing I didn't put in, which I'm gonna put in now. We have our heart of cortisone. Okay, so within here we have branches out into bronchioles, bronchi, bronchioles, and then we have bit of alveoli. Okay, and before, and then these alveoli These alveoli contain capillaries. And before I forget, very interesting fact, they contain what's called type 1. These alveoli contain type, probably not necessary to remember, type 1 and type 2 alveolar cells. Okay. But we know right here that oxygen gets brought in as well as carbon dioxide, okay, through diffusion. I don't know how to spell fucking diffusion. That's crazy. That's just one S. Oh, I used to want R too. Diffusion. Okay. And then we have right here. I'm gonna put in a little outline so you can see that a little heart. There's a heart, and then we have what's I think is called the apex. It's a cone-shaped part of the heart. But what do we know about the heart? Well, if we look at a little bit of heart anatomy, this is a horrible picture of the heart, and don't ever show this to your anatomy teacher. But we have 4 different sections, and it's separated by valves and whatnot. We have what's called our right atrium. You got our right ventricle. We got our left atrium. We got our left ventricle. Well, what do we know about the right atrium? It takes in deoxygenated blood. We know about our right ventricle. It transports that deoxygenated blood. Okay? And so, just so that we can go a little bit in our cardiovascular system, anatomy of the heart, we know that there's 3 points by which we take in deoxygenated blood. What is that? It is the coronary sinus, it is the inferior vena cava, and the superior vena cava. I like to remember the superior and inferior vena cavas together. Superior takes it from the upper body, the inferior vena cava takes it from the lower body, and the coronary sinus is vital to memorize because what it does is that it takes deoxygenated blood from the myocardial, the myocardium that creates contraction of the heart. Remember that we have contractions that sends action potentials and whatnot. Myocardium is vital. Remember, if we have, for example, an issue with the myocardium contraction, we have like something such as atrial fibrillation. This is where we can have coagulation to occur within the heart and cause, for example, hypoxia, ischemia, strokes because of lack of oxygen being transported throughout the body. Okay? So I'm gonna write that down. We have, within these 3 points, we have 3 points. We have our inferior and superior vena cava. Inferior takes it from below, superior takes it from up top. They take it from the body, CO2, deoxygenated blood. Okay, then we have a coronary sinus, and that takes it from our myocardium. Okay. And what do we know about here then? We also know this, so these are what takes it in, and then through the heart, it takes it through, what the very interesting fact is that our heart has arteries that takes in deoxygenated blood. It's the only arteries within our body that carry deoxygenated blood, right? It goes through these valves, and then it goes through what's called our pulmonary arteries. Let's just draw something right here. It goes through our pulmonary arteries and leaves out. It will leave out our pulmonary arteries. Okay. Well, where does this blood go from our pulmonary arteries? Well, this is where this whole process of the connection with the cardiovascular system has with the respiratory system. The pulmonary arteries is what this heart has, the pulmonary arteries that go out into these alveoli, where this diffusion from the deoxygenated blood. So we'll have the pulmonary arteries as red. Everybody has it blue. Not confuse you guys, we'll just use blue. Even we can't use blue because it doesn't freaking sheaths, man. CO2. And these are pulmonary arteries. Okay, they're what allow for the carbon dioxide to go through to release carbon dioxide that's within the blood into the alveoli, specifically the capillaries into the alveoli. Diffusion occurs, and then goes out and is breathed out. And then we breathe in, and we have oxygen that goes in our body. And how does the heart take in this oxygen? Well, it's a very interesting part, right? And that's where we end the video. No, I'm showing. Let me erase this beautiful photo that took 2 seconds to draw. Beautiful photo. Available picture. Sheets. Okay. We're gonna stay consistent today. We're gonna keep the heart red because why not? Well, we have our left, we have our right pulmonary arteries, we have our coronary sinus, inferior vena cava, superior vena cava. We're talking about deoxygenated blood so much. Let's talk about oxygenated blood a little. Well, this is where we take it into our pulmonary veins. Okay, this is a whole picture, and again, don't. But we have our pulmonary veins. And you're like, well, it's pulmonary veins. Isn't veins carry deoxygenated blood? Well, just like the pulmonary arteries in the heart where it carries deoxygenated blood, and it's the opposite. Same thing with the pulmonary veins. It's the only part of the body by which veins carries oxygenated blood. Okay? Our pulmonary veins carry oxygenated blood. I'm going to put in O2. Okay? And so as we breathe in this oxygen, it goes within specifically through the capillaries diffusion of our alveoli. And then this is where we have what's called our pulmonary veins, putting oxygen O2, that goes with, that takes in this oxygen and goes into our heart, or we then take it into, our heart, specifically our left atrium and our left ventricle, or right atrium, right ventricle, deoxygenated, left atrium, left ventricle, oxygenated, O2, CO2, CO2, O2. Okay, it goes into our heart. And this is where the final step is. Well, once we've taken this oxygenated blood, where the hell does it go? And this is where it goes into, I'm just gonna put it here. We have what's called the aorta. This aorta is subdivided into, we have what's called the thoracic, we have the ascending aorta. I think we have what's called the thoracic aorta, maybe descending aorta, but most importantly, we have the abdominal aorta. And this aorta carries the oxygenated blood and then it goes into our muscles and all throughout our body. Okay? So, break it down real quick. Through our trachea, we finished that transportation of deoxygenated, of carbon dioxide and oxygen. Right, oxygen gets breathed in, carbon dioxide gets left out. However, this can't be done unless we have this alveoli that consists of capillaries. This is where veins and arteries meet. Remember, if you're forgetting what these alveoli do, remember, it contains capillaries. What do we know about capillaries? Capillaries are where veins and arteries meet for diffusion of blood. Okay? Contain capillaries. The heart connects with the lungs where it releases carbon dioxide, it takes in oxygen. Carbon dioxide is taken in by the pulmonary arteries, and oxygen is taken, or is released by the pulmonary arteries, and oxygen is taken in by the pulmonary veins. Okay, it goes into the heart. Remember, the left atrium and left ventricle where it takes in oxygen, and then goes into the aorta where it's released to the bloodstream. Okay, and then we have our carbon dioxide that specifically within the left atrium, within the right atrium and right ventricle that lead out into our alveoli. Okay, so we'll break down one more thing. Like, well, what else is there to break? There's a lot, but for today, we'll break down one more thing. Finish it off. And this is where I tell you PT, because you need to do exercise. Why? Why do you need to do exercise? Well, because we have this thing. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but see if this erases. I want to make my drum dirty, you know what I'm saying? We have this thing. You guess what it is? It's the diaphragm. Hopefully I spelled this right. I can't spell. Yeah. Diaphragm. Sheesh. I think that's spelled right. Yeah, this diaphragm. Why is it vital? Why do you need exercise on that? Well, why they always say that when you work out, you improve your cardiovascular health. Well, the diaphragm is a muscle. And our brain sends signals to our diaphragm in order for it to contract and to contract and then whatnot. And why is that vital? Well, the diaphragm is what controls how much oxygen we take in and as well as carbon dioxide breathing out. As we breathe in, it's called inhalation, or I think it's also called infusion as well. Let me see, let me check real quick. Or inspiration. We have inspiration and we have expiration. Okay, inspiration is when we breathe in. And to put it in simple terms, as we breathe in, we expand that thoracic cavity. So like we're expanding that thoracic cavity. And then what happens is that we have this diaphragm, this muscle that contracts downwards. Okay? Expands, contracts down. Makes sense, right? It needs to go down in order for us to fill up this space. And then as we relax via exhalation, expiration, releasing carbon dioxide, then this is when the diaphragm goes up as well as the thoracic cavity decreases. Okay? Remember, diaphragm is a muscle that controls the capacity by which we breathe in oxygen as well as releasing carbon dioxide. Okay? As we breathe in, it goes up. As we breathe in, it goes down, increases thoracic cavity space. As we breathe out, then it goes up and it decreases thoracic cavity space. Okay? And so quite literally, the more we train, the more we exercise, the more that we're using our diaphragm, right? You don't go after a 2 mile, 3 mile, 4 mile run and just like, there's nothing, unless you're walking. But if you're sprinting, you're constantly having to breathe. You're constantly using diffusion of carbon dioxide as well as oxygen. You're constantly contracting that diaphragm and you're training this muscle. What do we know about muscles? We know that we constantly need to go through contraction in order for us to avoid any sort of breakage of the extracellular matrix, that the cells, that we have the cytoskeleton that needs mechanical tension as well as, basically stress in order to ignite inflammation as well as for it to grow. Right? Muscles need stress in order for it to grow, or just needs stress to even maintain, right? In order to maintain its size. If we don't constantly work out the muscle, not even constantly, if we don't work out the muscle at all, then we have what's called atrophy, and it decreases in size, becomes less efficient, right? That's where then you also, if you don't work out, then you have osteopenia, and you start decreasing bone density as well. Okay, we know the diaphragm's muscle. In order for us to constantly improve it, we must constantly contract it. So working out improves that diffusion, and it helps with making sure that we improve our breathing. Okay, so quite literally, working out can help improve your breathing because you're constantly working your diaphragm, the muscle that helps control that breathing in of your lungs. And that's why it's also vital too. I'm getting off topic, but when it comes to having disproportions within your body, let's say that you have like kyphosis, or you're having misaligned shoulders, or you're having back pain, your diaphragm has a huge impact. Because what do we know about our diaphragm? It's in the it's called the mediastinum. Okay, I'm just going to draw it here so it's easy to kind of visualize. But we have our rib cage. Well, what do we know about our rib cage? Well, our rib cage contains our abdominal sheath. It contains the rectus abdominis, transversus abdominis, whatnot. And what do we know about our abdomen? Well, we know that when it comes to overactivity, underactivity, postural alignment, what are the two things that we look for when it comes to whether you're a personal trainer or a doctor or whatnot? It really comes to a misalignment based on your glutes, specifically your hip flexors, your pelvis, in relationship with your stomach, your abdomen. We call that like lumbopelvic rhythm, for example, right? Because your abdomen is what helps control your position of your spine, and that's also largely dictated because it's connected to the pelvis and whatnot. Okay. So I know I got off topic there, but if you're really trying to make sure that you're maintaining proper structure and form within your exercises, as well as making sure that you're reducing any sort of back pain or any pain overall, it can lead up to your shoulders, because remember, your spine go up to your cervical spine, right? This can be a root of poor lack of breathing. Let's say that I have my rib cage is settling down anteriorly and it's going up posteriorly, and this can cause misalignment, cause false breathing, or is caused by false breathing, and then cause pain because then my pelvis is tilted towards one direction. Okay, so the cardiovascular system, the respiratory system have a vital impact not just simply by your breathing. It needs to constantly be trained, and how we breathe has a huge impact towards pain in other muscle groups as well as joints and whatnot. Okay, we go through one more thing. One more thing. I know I said that was the last thing, but I think that this is vital to add up because why not? We're gonna go, yeah, with delete all this. So you can tell which was in the dry erase markers. That would further help later. That's not good. Okay, we're gonna leave that here. But we need to make sure we take into account one more thing. We have layers within our lungs. Specifically, we have the parietal layer, Then we got we have visceral pleura layer. I'm pretty sure that is so you got your pleural cavity. It's gonna be empty space. And then you got your visceral pleura right here. So why am I showing this? Why does this matter? Well, the reason why I'm showing this is because this is vital when it comes to us breathing out and us breathing in. We need to make sure, if you can memorize anything, this probably could pop up on a test, is that the atmospheric pressure within the visceral pleura needs to be less. I'm pretty sure it needs to be negative pressure. You see, I'm pretty sure, you have to double check on me, but it has to be negative. The pressure needs to be negative pressure. So the atmospheric pressure within the visceral pleura needs to be less than the outside atmospheric pressure. And why is that? Well, I like to show it as kind of like a balloon, for example. The reason why you need the atmospheric pressure to be less than the inside than the outside is that if they're equal, for example, what would happen if this pressure is equal, this pressure inside is equal to the outside? Well, then it wouldn't be able to continue in the air. Same thing is that if this pressure was higher than out here, this was negative, this was outside, what would that mean? Hypothetically, let's say that this pressure within the visceral pleura was more than the outside, then we would need to breathe out. Why are we breathing in? Higher pressure, you have to breathe out. We need negative pressure within the visceral pleura in order for our lungs to be able to take in oxygen, right? It's like going to a bank and you have no money in the bank, so you need to, let's say you're in debt, so you need to work in order for you to gain money. You have a reason to go to work. But let's say you're freaking rich, you're a billionaire, unless you really like your job, you're like, I don't need money. I can just chillax. So then corporate took all your money, and then now you have negative dollars, and like, okay, now I need to get money again. Same thing here. You need negative pressure in the visceral pleura in comparison to the atmospheric pressure within your abdomen wall, because so that your lungs can need oxygen, can really then take in inhalation, and that once it's filled up, then it goes out via exhalation. Okay? Before I forget, I'm gonna add one more thing. This is a small detail. But as our lungs expand and then decrease in size via inhalation, exhalation, we need to know that this visceral pleura here creates what's called visceral fluid. Okay? This visceral fluid helps makes a smoother contraction of the lungs so that the layers don't grind up against each other. The same thing with the heart. You know anything about the heart? You have the endocardium, myocardium, you got the epicardium. And so you have this within this potential space, within this pleural cavity here, it's filled up with visceral fluid by the visceral pleura in order for us to not create this contraction within the parietal layer and the other layers that make up the lung. Okay? So before I end this video, I'm going to kind of explain this a little bit more. One more time. We have our diaphragm. Our diaphragm's a muscle that's vital when it comes to breathing in which we expand the thoracic cavity and it goes down, and then as we breathe out, we relax, we decrease that thoracic cavity, and the muscle goes up. Okay? And that's highly dictated by our diaphragm, and it's vital that when it comes to our cardiovascular health, because as like we work out, for example, we're increasing blood pressure. And what do we know about blood in relation to the cardiovascular system? What do we know about blood in relationship to the respiratory system? Well, blood releases carbon dioxide and blood breathes in, or blood takes in oxygen, right? So if we're increasing blood, we're having a constant back and forth. What does that mean? That the more we increase blood pressure, the more we increase diffusion within these alveoli. And what do we know about these alveoli? These alveoli is transportation of oxygen and carbon dioxide, which means we're going to breathe more, okay? And same thing vice versa. If we're going to breathe more, then we're going to have this process of diffusion to improve, and hence we're going to be working the diaphragm blood, okay? And so when you know about the contraction and release, relaxing, and the last thing we know is that the lungs are broken down into layers. And the layers contain the visceral pleural, then we have the pleural cavity, which is empty space. And then we have the parietal layer. The visceral pleural releases visceral fluid that allows for smooth contraction. Okay? And the lastly, not least though, is that the visceral pleura needs to have negative pressure in comparison to the atmospheric pressure compared to the abdomen wall, right? This is where we have a rib cage and we have a mediastinum and whatnot. Okay? So that is the connection with the cardiovascular system with the respiratory system. We broke down a little bit about that I just summing how we make sure we separate with what we eat and doesn't go within our lungs and so that what we eat goes into our digestive system, specifically our large intestine or large intestine, small intestine, then it goes throughout into our urinary system and out. We broke down the cardiovascular system, how the heart has a relationship with the respiratory system, which is the lungs. If you have any questions, let me know. Probably got a crap ton of shit wrong, but hope you enjoyed and you learned something.